I like salmon. Who doesn't? Salmon consumption's grown about 23% every year in North America. It's low in saturated fat. It's high in omega-3 proteins. But the real reason that salmon is growing 23% per year is because of cheap oil. Because cheap oil gives us access to what once was a local delicacy. In the same way that cheap oil gives us access to a whole bunch of cheaply produced goods that we buy in Walmart and big box stores every day. In a world of cheap oil in a global economy, the salmon becomes like a ball bearing or a microprocessor to be shipped all around the world. First, it's caught off the coast in Norway and transferred to a larger ship in another port, probably Hamburg or Rotterdam, where it's transferred to an even larger boat and schlepped all the way to China, normally to the Shandong Peninsula, which is China's fish processing capital. There, squads of nimble-fingered young women skin and debone the fish, fillet it, refreeze it, package it up, send it on another boat that 2 weeks later arrives in North America. And there that salmon on crushed ice and under halogen lights is sold as fresh. Well, when I look at that salmon, I know that I'm looking at the past, because the world of cheap oil that has had that salmon circumnavigate the world has come to an end. It's not that the world's running out of oil in any absolute geological sense. It never will. There's all kinds of oil trapped in all kinds of things. We know that best here in Canada. There's 165 billion barrels of oil in the Alberta tar sands. And beyond that, there's oil trapped in shale and all kinds of formations. But what we have run out of is the oil that you can afford to burn. Yes, Fort McMurray can produce 4 million barrels a day, as it's forecast to do by the International Energy Agency and the U.S. Department of Energy. In fact, both of those agencies, which I guess are the official barrel counters in the world, expect Fort McMurray and the Alberta oil sands to be the single largest source of new supply between now and 2025. In other words, to produce more new barrels of oil than even Saudi Arabia. And it can. But recognize one thing. The prices that will be needed to lift 4 million barrels out of the ground a day from Fort McMurray are the exact same prices that will take you right off the road. Because if Fort McMurray is going to produce 4 million barrels a day by 2020, that's not a world of $60 to $70 oil prices. The first thing that you heard out of Fort McMurray when oil prices crashed below $100 was some $50 billion of capital spending that was canceled. Because there's a lot easier ways of losing $3 billion than develop an oil sand project when your cost of extraction is double the price of oil. If we're going to see 4 million barrels out of Fort McMurray, that's a world of $200 oil. And a world of $200 oil is a world of $7 a gallon gasoline, or $2.25 a liter gasoline in Canada. And if you want to look at what North American roadways will look like when gas costs $7 a gallon, or $2.25 a liter up here, then all you have to do is look at Western Europe, because those folk have been paying those prices for the last 10 years, not because of the price of oil, but because of taxes. And if you look at what's happening in Western Europe, you find very different roadways. First of all, very different cars. No SUVs. GM makes the second most popular car sold in Europe. It's called the Opel Astra. But it would never see the light of day over here. It's far too underpowered and small to meet North American tastes. A whole lot of Opel Astras, not a whole lot of SUVs. But more importantly than the type of vehicles that people drive, is the fact that many, many West Europeans don't drive a vehicle at all. And in fact, if we were to use their car ownership rates as a model of what our highways will look like when we're paying $7 a gallon gasoline, then that basically suggests that 1 out of 5 are getting off the road. In other words, in the next 5 years, or the next 10 years, some 50 million Americans will be heading for the exit lane. Because the problem for Detroit is recovery will be very much a double-edged sword. Sure, at some point the economy will recover, and at some point people will have the financial wherewithal to buy cars. But that same recovery that will give people the financial wherewithal to buy cars will soon bring back the $4 pump prices that caused this recession in the first place, and even higher prices not that much down the road. Which is why the downsizing that we're seeing in Detroit is not cyclical, it's structural. We'll never get beyond 7-8 million vehicle units a year in a world of triple-digit oil prices. Which means that Detroit's basic problem is not that it's producing the wrong car, it's producing too many cars, about twice as many as is going to be needed. Which raises a very interesting question. If we're never going to see an economic recovery in Detroit or Windsor or Oshawa, why are we spending billions of dollars propping up an industry that's doomed to obsolescence by triple-digit oil prices in the first place? You see, because the problem is that when 50 million Americans or Canadians take the exit lane in the next 10 years, the problem is, will there be a bus to get on? Right now, if 20% of the folk in Toronto decided that they were going to scrap their cars and take the TTC, guess what? There's no room for them. So instead of spending billions of dollars on an antiquated industry doomed to obsolescence, why wouldn't we be spending billions of dollars on mass public transit so that when 50 million people do take the exit lane, there is a bus? And why couldn't all those unemployed workers in Detroit and Southern Ontario, why couldn't they suddenly make subway cars or buses or light rapid transit vehicles? During World War II, Detroit transformed itself from making cars into making tanks and bombers. If Detroit could transform itself into making tanks and bombers in World War II, why can't it transform itself into making public transit vehicles right now?